Imagine paying an extra 100 grand to buy a house for a feature that's not actually worth it and doesn't make you a single dollar back. Kiwi investors do it every week when they waste money on these 7 horrible home features. My company manages over 1,800 rental properties, and through that we see the stuff that breaks the fastest, what tenants ignore, and what quietly bleeds your cash year after year. So today we're counting down the 7 features you'll regret as an investor and a few that actually are worth paying for, so that by the end you'll know what to walk straight past at an open home to save yourself money. Number 1, fancy designer taps. I paid a fortune for these fancy taps. They're Italian designer, the kind you see in architecture magazines, and I loved them until they, and I mean all of them, were leaking. Water was going everywhere, and it turns out that New Zealand water pressure is different from Italian water pressure, and so these taps that we imported couldn't handle it. So right now I'm ripping out every single one and replacing them with something boring and Kiwi made. It'll be over 2 grand wasted, gone. For a homeowner, that's annoying. For a landlord with a tenant who can't use their kitchen tap, that's a tenancy tribunal claim waiting to happen. So buy taps that any Kiwi plumber can fix on a Saturday morning, boring, reliable, cheap to replace. Because it turns out that a boring kitchen is one of those features that actually pay off, like laminate bench top, standard cupboards, boring layout, easy to replace when things go wrong. And don't skip on the 2 things your tenants actually touch every single day. I'm talking about the cooktop and the dishwasher, because what we see at Opus Property Management is that if you have a cheap cooktop and it dies, if you're the landlord, you're the one paying to replace it. And it's not just the cost of the new appliance, right? Every time it fails, you've got to pay for someone to come out and actually install it too. So spend a bit more there. Fisher & Paykel or Bosch, not a 6 grand melee. It's a bit like buying a Toyota RAV4 versus a European sports car. Both get you from A to B, but one you can fix anytime, anywhere. The other punishes you every time it breaks. In a rental, you really want the Toyota. Coming in at number 2 is the one that breaks almost once a month across all of the rentals we manage, the InSinkErator. Look, the InSinkErator sounds amazing in theory because you can throw your food scraps in the sink, they get ground up, problem solved. In practice, they jam constantly. It's not just that sometimes tenants put things down there that really shouldn't go down there. It's just that InSinkErators are notoriously unreliable and they can easily cost you about $400 or more to replace, which is why as a landlord, I actually keep InSinkErators off the chattels list on the tenancy agreement so that if and when one breaks, I can just remove it instead of having the obligation to repair or replace it. And I actually did this recently with one of my own rentals. So it was the second breakdown in a year. So we ripped it out, replaced it with a $15 6 strainer from Bunnings. The tenant didn't mind, they didn't care. So if a property already has one of these, you're gonna have to factor in replacement and maintenance costs. If you're choosing whether to install one, don't. Coming in at number 3 are bold design choices. I'm talking deep navy feature walls, forest green statements in the bedrooms, bright orange paint behind the TV. Looks great to the homeowner or investor who chose it, looks rubbish to every potential buyer walking in. They're seeing a job they're just gonna have to undo. But there is a famous experiment that explains why this keeps happening. So there were these economists at Cornell and they gave half a room a coffee mug. And then they asked the other half of the room, how much would you be willing to pay for the same mug? Now, the people holding the mugs, they weren't going to sell that for less than about $5. The people without the mugs, they were only going to pay about $2.50 for that same mug. Now, it's the same mug, but it's double the price, purely because one group already owned it. Now, this is called the endowment effect. And it basically says that we overvalue what's already ours, especially the things that we picked because we liked them and we currently own them. So that deep navy wall that you fell in love with or that you've lived with for a long time, you rate it because you're used to it. The tenant or the buyer walking through, they don't. They just see a weekend of repainting. Which is why people who flip houses tend to stick to one neutral color throughout. I'm talking Resine Black White or Dulux Ocarito, a color everyone's fine with because that is going to keep your whole market in play. A bold color that you love, it could shrink your market down to the handful of people who happen to share your tastes. And number 4, we've got pools, spas, and outdoor kitchens. The Kiwi dream features. It sounds amazing at the open home. The reality? Spa pools need to be treated with chemicals almost every week, otherwise they turn into a science experiment. Outdoor kitchens, they get used for 3 months of the year, then they rust the other 9, and tenants just don't maintain them. I mean, why would they? It's not their pool, it's not their barbecue, so they're not going to be out there scrubbing it down like you might be if it was your own home. So you turn up to your property inspection, the pool is green, the barbecue, that's covered in cobwebs. Now it's a $2,000 repair bill to get that pool usable again. But if you think about a feature that tenants actually care about, like it is like the flip side, but heated towel rails. These are cheap to install, maybe about $200, but they are nice to have for tenants because they solve a real problem that you don't think about until it's too late. Now, what is that problem? Tenants need to dry their towels somewhere, and if you don't give them a heated towel rail, they might hang their wet towels over the doors, over your door frames, over heaters, anywhere flat. That could damage your doors over the long term, and it's more expensive to fix at the end of a tenancy. While a heated towel rail, well, it removes that temptation, and the tenants pay for the power themselves anyway, so it's not your operating costs. If you're worried about a power bill, add a timer switch. And if you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor, hit the like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. That's how I know which videos to do more of. Number 5 are big gardens and feature landscaping. You walk into an open home, it's got mature trees, established hedges, sculpted box hedges too, bit of topiary, feels premium. But tenants don't want manicured gardens. They don't want to feel responsible for maintaining anything that detailed. The only outdoor area tenants use, and we see this all the time at Opus Property Management, is the deck and just a simple basic lawn. It doesn't even need to be that big. And on top of that, you've got to remember that in New Zealand, landlords are typically responsible for the big landscaping like hedges and trees. So it's an extra cost to you for often no extra rent. Now we've still got 2 horrible home features left, and at number 6, this one's going to annoy you. It's your old extra stuff. So when Kiwis want to turn their own home into a rental property, what inevitably happens is they think they're being helpful by leaving some of their own stuff behind. It might be the washing machine, the dryer, the big bookshelf, the couch that you can't be bothered moving. It's not helpful. Tenants generally don't want your second-hand whiteware, especially if it's like a family tenant. Typically, we see that they do have their own washing machine, their own dryer. They want to wash their kids' clothes in machines that they trust. And the furniture, that's even worse. If you've got a big freestanding bookshelf in the rental kitchen that the tenants don't want or won't use, or if you want to leave a couch behind, well, it might not suit the new tenant's lounge set that they've already got. They've got their own furniture. If you want to leave a bed in the bedroom, well, they've probably got their own. In fact, when I talked to my head of property management, she said tenants don't want your rubbish that you find too hard to move. They're going to find it too hard to move as well. So just move it yourself. What you see as generosity, your tenant can see as homework. And then finally, coming in at number 7 is a big section. This is the trap that Kiwis fall into all of the time. You'll hear Kiwi investors say that the value's in the land and a property with more land is a better investment. After all, they're not making any more of it. But I couldn't find anyone who'd actually checked if that was true for investors. Do properties with more land go up in value at a faster rate and make a better investment? I went out and got the data. And what we found is that properties with more land, yes, they are more expensive, but they don't necessarily go up in value faster. They don't double in value faster. So they're not automatically a better investment. And I've got into lots of fights about this with like other investors. And what I say to them is, look, I've got my data. I published it on OneRoof. If you disagree, go get some data, prove me wrong. In fact, I'd love that. Let's have a good old argument about it down in the comments section. But look, I don't really care about what your old Uncle Lester told you makes a good investment or not. Get the numbers, then we can have a real conversation. It turns out that tenants and home buyers pay not for land, but instead they pay for bedrooms. The exact size of the land is often not at the top of home buyers and tenants' priority lists. Instead, when they're buying a house or choosing a rental, they look for bedrooms. They look for whether the house is going to suit their needs, not necessarily how big the back section is. But that doesn't mean that anything relating to size Doesn't matter. There are some land-related features that actually do make a difference, especially off-street parking. We're seeing more and more new builds being built without a car park at all. Now that might be okay for like an inner city studio apartment that you're going to rent on Airbnb, but for a townhouse or a house in a suburb, even if it's close to the central city, you're gonna need a car park that's off the street. A property without it gets fewer applications and, in our experience, lower quality tenant applications as well. If you check yourself on trademerealestate.co.nz right now, rental listings with off-street car parking rent faster and for more than ones that don't. But here's the kicker. Almost everything else in your house you can upgrade later. Parking, you can't. The driveway's there or it isn't. It's the highest impact feature you can't retrofit, so it's the one worth paying for upfront at purchase. So those are the features you'll regret as an investor and the few that are actually worth paying for. But the number one question I get asked more than almost any other is, if I lost everything tomorrow and woke up with nothing, what would I do and how would I start all over again? I made a whole video on exactly that, the strategy, the first property, the next steps, the mistakes I'd avoid the second time around. Click the video on your screen. I'll see you in there.